pianists, colleagues, teachers, and friends. Today we're talking about how to teach the Bach Prelude in C major from the beginning of the Well-Tempered Clavier. This piece needs no introduction, but here's what it sounds like. If we haven't met before, my name is Jana Williamson, and welcome to my home piano studio in the western suburbs of Chicago. I love sharing free content here on YouTube as well as on my website for piano teachers in particular. And I am happy to say that I do have a new course titled Teaching Historical Style, which is very affordably priced. And if you enjoy my videos, particularly about Baroque and classical era music, things that are in that definite historical genre, then I'd love for you to check this out because it's a bit of an overview of all the things we include in teaching these older styles, performance practice, and all those details. So please do go into the description of this video and check that out. As far as this prelude goes, it's funny, I hadn't even thought about covering this ever until somebody recently requested this as a video, and I'm trying to figure out why I didn't think of it. I think because I actually don't teach this that frequently. I have taught it many times, but because this is a prelude that goes with a fugue, it is a prelude and fugue in the Well-Tempered Clavier, Book 1, I tend to think of those as advanced pieces, and I definitely teach preludes and fugues to my advanced students. And I don't tend to teach this as much as a standalone prelude, but I know many people love this piece. This is on the most well-known and well-loved in the keyboard repertoire. And I know many people want to play this piece. And it is appropriate to play this as a standalone piece, even though it goes with the fugue. Just a word about difficulty. This would be a mid-intermediate piece for sure, on par with many of Bach's little preludes, of which I have covered in other videos. But the fugue is quite difficult, so that is definitely advanced level. And if you look at Jane McGraw's book about difficulty leveling, she really hammers home the point that while this prelude can stand alone, the fugue is difficult, and so if you're going to play them as a unit, you do need to be at least an early advanced player. All right, so as far as the style of this individual movement, it is a classic Baroque prelude in that it is simply a group of chords. It is just one big, long chord progression that Bach has indicated to play with this constant stream of 16th note rhythm. So you just get the constant 1 E and a 2 E and a. And each chord is repeated twice to make one full measure. And it goes through for 32 measures of that before we get one little slightly more melodic flourish at the end, and then we end on a C major chord. What you might not know if you haven't done a lot of Baroque study is that many composers would just simply write out preludes as whole note chords, just a series of chords in the voicing that they wanted. And then performers had the option to arpeggiate them or play them in whatever style they wanted. And the prelude was intended to warm up your listeners' ears for the key that you were going to play in, or prepare your listeners for what was coming next, or even to allow the performer to kind of warm up on the keyboard before they went into a fugue, or in the case of the suites, into other dance movements. So many of the English suites and partitas have preludes before they go on into the allemande and the courante and the rest of the dances that are part of the suite. So this is no different from that. We are exploring the C major harmony, opening up our ears to what might come next. And I think what's most notable about this prelude is just the masterful progression that Bach has created. If you don't love Baroque music, I'd love to be your ambassador, your missionary for Baroque music to help you love it more. The way you can always appreciate Baroque music is by, and particularly that by Johann Sebastian Bach, is by looking at the craftsmanship that in which it's composed. whether it's contrapuntal like a fugue and looking at how he manages that very, very strict and difficult form, or whether it's something more homophonic like this and just marveling at the chord progression, how simple and yet how amazing it is at the same time. So in teaching this, I would simply block the chords. I know it's not profound, but what we're going to do with our students is just go through the chords, and you don't have to do all 32 measures at once. You can do this in 4 bar sets, so measures 1 through 4. And that's a standard start on C, go to something slightly more interesting, and then arrive back at C. Right after that, in measure 5 and on, he does a bit of a sequence. A sequence is simply a melodic or motivic moment that's then something short musically that's then moved up or down to a new pitch. It's not transposed, it's just moved up or down in the scale that you're in. And then of course there's much more harmony from there. I would take that in maybe 4 or 8 bar sections with your student and help them block it, partly for learning it, but then also to hear the chord progression on a grander scale. Find what moves into the next one, where does it feel like it resolves, where does it feel like it's a little more dissonant, crunchy, if you will, and then where is it more consonant and resolved, as I said. I also love to find the individual chords that I think are the special chords, or the moments that I really love, and then put some sort of symbol in the music, like a little heart, like, oh, I love this chord because it's so special. 2 of the moments that I think are special are measure 12 and measure 18. So after that sequence, starting in 5, so we have 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9, 10, 11, we have a little arrival point there at G major in measure 11. And then right after that, this is one of my favorite chords. Ooh, I was not expecting that after G major. That is a fully diminished chord. You can think of it being based on G, which would be from the bass note in the left hand, or on E in the right hand. It doesn't matter. Either way, it's a fully diminished 7th chord. That's a really nice one that resolves to D minor. So really it's actually a C sharp diminished 7th going to D minor. So that diminished 7th to D minor, and then it sequences that to take us back to C. One of the other places I love, as I mentioned, is measure 18, and it's that G7 chord. And the reason I think that one is special is not because it's dissonant or crunchy, but because the bass note is so much lower than where we've been before. 12 and on from there. Nice little half step on the bottom there. And then, that low G, which then again takes us back to C. Similarly, there's lovely movement when we get towards the end and it's starting to build a little bit, like maybe we're going to do a final arrival at C, starting in 27. What's notable, I think, about 28 into 29 is this half step movement. So we have the E flat in the tenor and F sharp in the top of the right hand, which both go up 1 half step. That's a very nice movement. So I'll play those chords again in 27. And then the best moment, in my opinion, you can disagree, is the C7 chord at measure 32. Because Bach could have just ended the piece right there. It could have been measure 30 is the G sus, G7 sus, to G7. And then we could just be done. But instead, it's G7 sus to G7 to a C7, meaning you have to go on to F because it's the secondary dominant, the 5-7 of F, which then he finally works out back to C. So G7 sus in measure 30, G7. bit about the harmony and how to kind of think through what are the special chords, what are the dissonant moments, what are the resolutions, and I would definitely guide my student through that. Hey friends, I realized after I recorded this video that it was longer than I thought it was, so I've decided to split it into 2 parts. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel so that you get a notification about next week's video, which will cover the rest of what I have to say about this C major prelude, including thoughts about whether or not to use the damper pedal. I'll see you then.